Hello and welcome back to Raise Gaming and my first update to my Mercenary build. If you were following on from the original video that I made, the concept was simple: the ideal mapper to enjoy the endgame with. And with that in mind, the Witchhunter Ascendancy makes complete sense as that choice. Between the % chance to explode enemies when they die, the potential to trigger the cull to instantly kill an enemy when it reaches lower health, or before long, the decimating strike to essentially cut up to 30% of even a boss's health bar to open a fight, on paper, it just seems like the clear choice, the winner for that purpose. But what would be a great combo for that idea? Well, it's the very popular grenadier concept, focusing on crossbow grenade skills. And I was drawn to the concept by this skill, cluster grenade. A massive AoE that spreads out of these little mini grenades, looking very satisfying, but also great for AoE clear. I just need to make it to the skill first, and since it's level 52 before you can actually use it, obviously it was going to be a while, so what was I planning on doing on the way? Well, as I talked about, I plan to start with permafrost bolts combined with explosive grenade to pop the frozen targets, then hitting flash grenade relatively soon after that, leading to that for early damage, as well as the CC. I wanted to try all of the grenades to see what felt good or bad for a grenade focused setup in general. But as soon as we hit gas grenade, we came to what appears to be a very common realization, and so in short, let's look at that. Gas grenade has three parts to it: the impact, the poison cloud, and the explosive damage that converts 100% of the physical damage to fire damage. The attack damage is way higher than we expected it to be, about 3 times higher than what we saw in pre-release footage and showings of this skill. So I figure anyone paying attention would see this much higher percent on the attack damage and go, hang on, there's something here. And so I'm not surprised that it's been very popular as a center of lots of different kinds of grenade builds. Now, unfortunately, it was indeed nerfed because very strong. And that happened right after I put the build video together, so I had to update that to reference it in the video. And I said in that first video that the nerf at the top end was about 40% less damage. Actually less than that of a nerf, but generally that. Despite this, it's proven to be extremely strong. There's nothing to worry about and still serves as the core basis of this build. Now I'm high enough level in the endgame, I actually have access to cluster grenade, and that's been fun too, but it's not been working how I imagined it would. You can only really get 2 charges with the right skill tree setup, and it's a longer cooldown in general. So I found it great to work in weaving between gas grenade cooldowns when you're getting lower on charges on that. So it still ended up in my build as a potent tool, but not my planned main source as I had before the actual launch. Therefore, the true core of the build is still gas grenade, and around that I've enhanced its damage and general output with things like ignite, fire exposure, shock, and armor break, of course. This leads to pretty incredible casual burst, or from mapping you can see how it's pretty much just one button spam gas grenade for most of the clear, using a mix of fast movement speed and many rolls to pass through areas, and occasionally committing a bit harder to a fight if there's an elite, a rare, or whatever. But something is popping these gas grenades very quickly, isn't it? And that is the key of the build. This is the Radiant Grief Lace HUD unique helm, and as you can see, it has a unique effect. Enemies in your presence are ignited, as though dealt 100 base fire damage. Ignite is an ailment that will trigger as you deal fire damage to enemies, and you can enhance the potential of that, but this is a guaranteed ignite. If an enemy comes near you, you immediately ignite them. The description of gas grenade says, burning effects or detonator skills will cause the cloud to explode in a fiery blast. So before we were using explosive grenade to detonate it, but burning effects such as ignite will do it instantly as well. That's where the bugginess and why it got nerfed in the first place comes into play. Firewall was a consistent source of burning effect, but it was too easy of a source, it would seem. Meanwhile, this unique, arguably easier. You don't have to even press a button. Every enemy that comes near you gets ignited, so it automatically triggers the gas grenades immediately. This dropped for me during Act 1 in Cruel, and now that I'm aware of its existence and how potent it's been for me, I would tell you guys that if you're about to go through Cruel, you're earlier or later, this is such a build-defining unique that I think you should be trading for it. When I first saw this concept, I thought it would be just good for mobbing, right? Clearing AoE packs, but not so important for single target. And I was wrong when I first had that impression. It absolutely crushes in single target. And it's not just because of the instant explosions, which are a big deal as we'll talk about, but it's because of that 100% uptime of Ignite. It means you can reliably lean into different damage multipliers for a reliable damage increase. An obvious example of that will be this support skill, Immolate. Supported skills can't cause ignite anymore, but supported attacks gain 30% of damage as extra fire damage against ignited enemies. So everything, including bosses, are always ignited. This is a straight up 30% damage gain on fire damage. It's not just that. I also talked about something I was aiming for at the end of the last build video, and it was this little area here with the fire. Fire penetration is very important, but this has become even more potent. Incendiary. This increased chance to ignite is irrelevant, but 30% increased damage with hits against burning enemies, such as ignited enemies. This is a permanent 30% damage increase for every enemy I fight because they're all ignited. So it's combining into a massive damage output for a gas grenade in general, and there are more ways we can enhance it all as we're going to talk about. So let's do that, starting with the skill setup, what I'm running, how we support it, and then we'll talk about how to use it. Right, let's run down the list, starting with gas grenade. Obviously, you're going to want to enhance the power of this as much as possible by ranking it up as your first priority. For support, we are still using scatter shot. Very simply, this is increasing the amount of gas grenades that you get, therefore more damage. As I've explained, everything around me is immolated because of the ignite, so we definitely want this. And lastly, fire infusion is going to increase the fire damage that we're actually dealing. Yeah, it's all fire damage, so it makes complete sense. I was also considering fire penetration, but I do think it's overkill because of what I'm getting from my passive tree, and I'd love to ask you guys an opinion on this, especially if you played Path of Exile 1. Fire penetration is very important for this build, but I've also picked up another one that it kind of works with this. Attack damage penetrates 15% enemy element resistances, so I should be getting about 30% fire pen with those two passives in particular. So we could consider running my 4th support slot once I get that as fire penetration, meaning we'll get an extra 30% fire resistance pen. But that would be really overkill is what I'm thinking based on what I've got from my passive tree. My understanding is that if an enemy is resistant to fire, I'm going to need about 40% fire pen to fully get through that. So if I had 50, 60% fire pen, would that not be super overkill and unnecessary? That's my understanding based on what I learned about Path of Exile 1 resistance and penetration. So please, if you know more, let me know. But that is why I'm not planning on running fire penetration, at least not for now. Since I am absolutely spamming this gas grenade though, it is very heavy on the mana, so I'm going to talk about ways we try to address the mana issue, but there is a support that could help with that called inspiration, basically meaning that the skill that is supported costs less to use, so that's another thing you could absolutely consider. Now, importantly, you'll see that my explosive grenade isn't really being supported anymore because I'm not really using it. So you would fire explosive and then gas grenade and then they would pop at the same time, or at least almost. The gas spawns before the explosive, then that gets popped instantly by the explosive grenade. That's the combo that you would be using if you did not have this unique. So you should be supporting your explosive grenade a lot more than I am right now. But because this unique is so vital, get it, trade for it, get it as soon as you can. Therefore, I'm not really using explosive grenades, so I've just got like a slot from when I was using it fast forward, but it's really not that important. Now, people were talking about it in the comments, like why use explosive grenade if you've got explosive shot? Well, explosive shot just doesn't deal as much damage as explosive grenade when properly supported. Explosive grenade, gas grenade, they pop at the same time. You're getting the damage of the gas grenade and the explosive grenade at the same time. So that was my reasoning for that, and I just wanted to address that. But let's move on to oil grenade, which of course I'm still using as my primary source of fire exposure. This also affects fire penetration essentially because it lowers the fire resistance of the target. So if it has 0% fire res, it should, as it says, inflict a minus 20%. So by running fire pen, which I have 30% of, I should be getting through that and bringing it down to minus 10% even against a fire resistant enemy. Either way, the oil is very potent for that effect, which we're able to enhance by supporting it with something as simple as strip away. Exposure applied by supported skills has 30% increased effect, so we're even ripping through that even more aggressively. Alongside that, we still run persistence because we want it to last as long as possible so that we don't have to actually keep firing the oil grenade through, say, a rotation. And lastly, magnified effect to make the area bigger because bosses do move around, or if you're doing AoE clear, you hit more mobs with it. Next up, we have cluster grenade. This is that big shot which explodes in a massive radius after quite a long detonation time because the grenades have to get around each other. This is great in AoE, as you can see, because of the massive range of it. But when am I actually using it? Well, I'm spamming gas grenade, and then as I get low on gas grenades, that's about when I'm dropping the cluster grenades. And so I actually kind of want the area to be tighter than it is, at least initially. So as you can see, I actually prefer this with concentrated effect so that it has a smaller AoE, but the area damage that it's in is actually going to be, well, harder, tighter. So for mob clear, it's going to be closer AoE, and it's even more effective in single target because of that. So concentrated effect, and then we increase its damage with primal armament, which by the way I am also considering putting into gas grenade as my 4th socket to further improve that damage. And then we also have execute. Supported skills deal 40% more damage with hits against enemies that are on low life. A lot of what we're doing is culling and executing. And again, when I'm in a boss fight, what I'm doing is I'm spamming my gas grenades over and over and over and over and over until eventually I'm forced to do something else like cluster grenade. By that point, I'm hoping the boss is below 50%, 40%. And so that's where, execute would kick in and make it deal significantly more damage. Next, flash grenade is what I was talking about before. We are pretty much using overpower for a better stun build-up and devastate to break the armor. Devastate just means we're getting that broken armor effect against targets whenever we stun them, so very potent in boss fights. This opens a new burst window where we go really hard while the armor's broken. The only thing that I've actually added to this is payload, because I use this only to stun. It gives it a longer cooldown, but it gives it a chance to activate a second time, as you can see, which means we're going to get that stun build up and the armor break even faster through even one use if you get particularly lucky. Next, we have our passive, which I have changed since last time and I talked about this. I was using the Frost Herald, which just wasn't relevant anymore. So looking at the persistent buff auras, there wasn't really any great choices. Wind Dancer gives you evasion though, giving us a way to mitigate damage. It also triggers an effect called Gale Force when you get meleeed, dealing a bit of damage and knocking back enemies around you, which is a nice idea, but also this critical hit chance. So it's a defensive that also slightly modifies our damage. Out of the options I all felt weren't very good, it's the one that I picked. In regards to supporting it though, it's pretty much the same as we were doing before, where we have clarity for the massive mana regen, so when we're spamming these gas grenades, it really helps with that. So I really think this is just a non-negotiable thing we need. Clarity should be the first support, the only support you run for your persistent aura. This will mean you'll need a total of 40 spirit before you can do it, but by the time you're in Cruel, that should be fine. It's also supported by Vitality, just giving us some extra regen. And I've helped myself with Precision to help accuracy rating. If you do not understand accuracy rating, it basically just means your damage is going to apply and hit. You can check whether it's going to by clicking on an ability like Gas Grenade here. If we scroll down, you can look at the damage section and it says estimated main hand chance to hit within 2 meters, so 100%. You need 100%. Let's take off precision and lose that 30% increased accuracy and see what happens. I go down to 99%. Not really a big deal, but it's going to become more of an issue as we progress into the endgame. So I need to make sure my accuracy is high enough. So I'm supporting it to achieve that. You can also find accuracy on all your gear. And as I'll talk about in the skill tree, there's one thing I still don't have because I don't need it. 15% increased accuracy rating. Curved weapon will be a 1-point pickup for me whenever I need that accuracy. So this could be an alternative pick for you. Plus the 10 dexterity, not a bad thing either. Lastly, we have the Volt Grenade, which I talked about last time. I wasn't really getting the use out of it like I hoped. The simple concept is to spam grenades out and cause a shock trigger, which is about a 20% times increased damage. All damage sources get that modifier. The problem with this Volt Grenade is that I'm not getting that Shock Grenade consistently enough. There's often times I don't want to use it because of the mana cost, or say the cooldown where I've got to get these 3 grenades out. I could just be going to town during that DPS window. So I'm still not convinced by it. Basically, I'm supporting it with conduction to give that increased chance to shock, right? And I've also got lightning infusion now because my understanding is that the more lightning damage you deal with this, again, the more chance to shock. But I just don't know how to make this more consistent. If you guys have any advice or ideas, let me know. But yeah, quick rotation talk. So for mob clear using the unique helm concept, I'm literally just running around dropping a gas grenade and rolling through, letting all the mobs die and being near the enemies to constantly trigger that ignition. As you can see, I'm moving, I'm quick, I'm clearing. It's very easy. It's almost a one-button thing. Occasionally, I'll drop an oil grenade for the fire exposure, increased damage. Maybe I'll send a flash grenade to stun and armor break, maybe a rare or something. If I'm low on gas grenades, I'll use cluster grenades. It's very simple. Again, for the single target though, the rotation's somewhat important. You want to make sure they're stunned, armor broken using this combo. You want to make sure they're fire exposed with the oil grenade. And if you can get the shock off, you can use the Volt Grenades too. I spam them out as well. Then while again, it's fire exposed, armor broke, stunned, maybe even shocked, gas grenade spam as much as you physically can in that burst window. Drink mana potions to get more out. Then if you're forced to, you can cluster grenade, but ideally that just gives you a little bit more time before the next gas grenades. As a little reminder, the closer you are to the gas grenade as it pops, the more potent it will be. As you fire the gas grenades out, you see that the area of effect grows and spreads, and ultimately spreads the damage out. That can be a good thing for mob clear maybe, but if you get the explosion off sooner, the gas doesn't spread out, the explosion doesn't spread out, condensing it onto your target, leading to no wasted damage potential in a single target. Being closer to the targets then, and making sure the explosive grenade pops as soon as the gas grenade exists, that's ideal. Which again, is why I'm more of a subscriber to explosive grenade combo with gas grenade, because it pops faster. Explosive grenade, gas grenade, watch how it pops nigh on instantly. No time to spread out, great damage. Right, it's time for the big one, the skill tree. I'm going to try to be quick on this because it's going to be a lot of what we looked at before with some new additions and what I plan next. Starting with the ascendancy, as you can see, I don't have my third set yet, but I'm about to get it. But yeah, same plan as before. Start with Zealous Inquisition for the incredible mobbing. Head into Calling Strike with Pitiless Killer, again for incredible mobbing, but is relevant against rares and bosses. I'm aiming for Decimating Strike because that's going to give me that huge hit at the start of a fight as well. And then after that, I'm probably going to go Witchbane for the concentration effect, since that will be relevant against longer fights and, basically means I'm dealing with spells less. If I was going to be doing specifically bossing, I'd also aim for No Mercy and potentially drop Zealous Inquisition for that, if I was just hunting bosses specifically and not mapping. Right, now the tree, let's run down the list. I'm going to follow the path that I generally went, and then I will follow on to what went next. So from the start, we go down projectile damage into Remorseless, coming down and around to Volatile Catalyst, bringing us down to where we're going to get the biggest power spike, the grenade sort of tree. Here you come up to Cluster Bombs, and then I actually go down this way around to Grenadier now. The reason is that I don't need increased area of effect anymore. The explosion radius is more than big enough, so it's like this 1 point I view as wasted. So I save it and go down this way instead, netting me increased cooldown recovery, which is more important because this means the charges come back quicker, so I'm able to spam Gas Grenade even more. Anyway, getting extra cooldown use and also increasing the projectile amount is very potent indeed. From here, we'll head down and to the right, aiming for volatile grenades to help reduce the grenade fuse duration, meaning they pop faster. And then the next power spike is heading down to this crossbow tree and aiming for repeating explosives, giving them that % chance to activate a second time, which could be very potent indeed. Coming back up, we can get more damage by going into the two-hand tree, especially aiming for Colossal Weapon. And as I said earlier, you could go for Curved Weapon if you're lacking accuracy, but I'm not, and you probably won't be yet, so I would save this point. To increase our damage, we can also go into Ricochet here for just 2 points, but we kind of need survivability at this point. So that's where I come across into Armor and Evasion and Feel No Pain, as well as Battle Hardened, and net 2 points up here for Hard to Kill for the increased flash recovery rate and regen, passive regen. Now we've got some defensives in the build and our main power spikes, it's time to pick up the Fire Pen and all the perfect stuff from Immolate. So that's where I come over to the fire, picking up Smoke Inhalation, coming around to the Fire Pen and picking up Incendiary. And again, this is very potent when you have the unique helm because you're going to always be igniting targets, they're always going to be burning. Now it's time to fill in the gaps. CDR is very important, so I come around here to Authority for the cooldown recovery rate nodes in particular. On the right here, we can pick up some attack speed so we can get those grenades out and faster. Up here, we can pick up Distracting Presence for more cooldown recovery rate. That's what it's all about. I can net just 2 points here to get Adrenaline Rush, which gives me movement speed and attack speed if I've killed recently. Great for mapping and mobbing in general. And this is where it becomes a bit harder to spend points efficiently. As you can see, I start to head around to the right. On the way, we dip into Giant Slayer for the big damage increase for rare and unique enemies. It's like your big enemy killer passives. We continue on, heading up and around to these nodes over here. As I showed earlier, this is where we're getting more Element Pen, and we're aiming for more cooldown recovery rate. And also, the little benefit of skill effect duration is not a bad thing. Next, as you can see with my points, I'm coming up to the right, aiming over here. I'm aiming for Catalyst because, well, increased element damage with attacks. A lot of what I'm doing is fire damage, so it's going to be a little bit more damage there too. My main focus after this is going to be defenses. So, armor, evasion, whatever I can find to get that. The obvious nodes I'm looking at is this section down here that's going to give me more armor, and up over here as well we have more nodes associated with that. So defenses is what I'm going to be aiming for the end game to tackle that issue. How can I efficiently spend my skill points to achieve that? That's what the next section is going to be all about, but that's what I'm thinking about, so you know. Right, let's now talk about gear and try to be quick about it. For weapon, it's the same as it was before. You want physical damage to be as high as possible. So you can see this insane weapon I've got here is up to 215 physical damage. This decides the numbers here, and it's going to be a great way to tell you whether it's going to be a damage increase or a loss when you're changing weapon. So let's take my old crossbow here, and you can see how my explosive grenade has 2,835, and as we go ahead and slap this old one in, it goes down to 1,867. It's 1,000 less, basically. So this is a really quick way you can check whether it's an actual upgrade or not, though you must consider what runes you've got and all the affixes and so on. But what you're aiming for in simple terms is the percent increased physical damage. That's the most important affix there, followed by flat damage increases, which ideally you would get physical damage like I have here, and fire damage for elements. Cold and lightning, not ideal, but better than nothing. But as you can see, I also have plus levels to projectile skills. All of the gas grenades are projectile skills, so that's phenomenal. Finally, things like accuracy, attack speed, and stats like dexterity and strength, should you need them, that can be handy too. Leech and crit, also not too bad. I do want to make you aware of a specific crossbow type that is also pretty incredible for us. It's this one. They're called bombard crossbows. They come with this inherent skill. Grenade skills fire an additional projectile. We absolutely want that if you can get it. Unfortunately, I don't have it on my crossbow that's got insane numbers, but it would be like Exodia forming together if I could get all these stats on one of these crossbow types for that inherent passive. For jewelry then, it basically comes down to what you need. You need to check your resistances and aim for that. You can see that I'm lacking in lightning right now, but I am using a lightning charm, then 50% fire, 50% cold. So everything I'm doing is balancing my element resistances and trying to pump those numbers. I've just got started in the endgame in this footage, so it's a high priority for me. Element res comes from your defensive gear. A lot of it can come from your gems, your jewelry. So rings and amulet, I aim for resistances to the elements you need and maximum life on everything that I can get. There's also flat extra damage you can get, like physical on fire ideally, like I said before with a crossbow. For your armor, you're looking for health and resistances to elements every single time. And then the other stuff like extra evasion, energy shield, or armor ideally for us. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Life regen, accuracy, these things are nice, but not important. You can get added damage on gloves and stuff like that though, which can be helpful. The only thing I need to mention is that boots, you absolutely want movement speed on them. It's absolutely vital. With this, you'll be able to avoid mechanics, map faster, progress through packs. It's just a dream. Again, the charm will be whatever you're needing. Maybe you need poison resistance. Maybe you're lacking on lightning res like me. Use a charm that's buffing the thing you need. When it comes to runes, in your weapon, you want iron runes because that's going to increase the physical damage, which is the primary thing that increases our damage. 100% of that's converted to fire on our gas grenade, for example. So we run 2 of those ideally. In your armor, it's whatever resistances you're lacking. So I'm lacking in lightning res, so I'm putting that into my gear. Use it to get extra resistances to the stuff you need. Lastly, for flasks, I just want to say that the ultimate flask is the biggest one. So here is an ultimate flask. And what you're aiming generally is gains charges per second. This recovers it so you can keep drinking it without needing to kill anything or, restore them. Second to that, I would increase the potency of the heal, so it's giving me more mana or heal based on that. But here I have increased recovery rate, so basically it gives me the heal faster. Instead of over 4 seconds, it's over 2. But you can see how I've got it on my main flask, and also the charges per second here on my mana flask. But there you have it. That's what I've been using to absolutely comically crush Cruel and step into the endgame. I'm really enjoying it, but the long-term concerns that I've got right now is survivability, as I talked about in the passive tree section. I know that things are going to get harder, I know that enemies are going to hit harder, and I know that my damage is incredible right now. So I'm going to be focusing on getting more armor, more element resistance, and any survivability tools I can get to mitigate damage. I hope this update and overview was in-depth enough to answer your questions and give you like a good idea of what you're doing and why, but also wasn't too dense that it was complicated or something. If you guys can add anything to this, let us know in the comments. But if you've enjoyed it, don't forget to hit like. For now then, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.